Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life you absolutely love. I'm your host and coach, Fletcher Ellingson. Amy will be joining us after the commercial break as we talk about a surprising discovery that dramatically affects how long you live. And if you want to live a long life, then listen up. Like I said, you may find it quite surprising. Remember, health is the first wealth, so stick around. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that if you have questions that you would like us to answer on or off the air, you can email those directly to me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com. Hey, if you're feeling stuck, if in your life, financially or in your health or in your relationships, I want you to know that freedom is just one decision away. But it takes courage to make the decision. But when you do, it feels so good. So wherever you are stuck, make the decision to reach out, get help. It may look like working with a coach like me or a therapist, or maybe you need the accountability of a group like AA or NA, or maybe you need to join a group for whatever, but just for a high level of accountability. Check out your local meetup groups. There's lots of those, and you're gonna find like-minded people. So wherever you are, reach out. Freedom is one decision away. Now let's get to today's email. It says, "Hello, Fletcher. I want to do something like you're doing. I want to help people solve their problems. I know I have to solve some of my own problems first, but then I want to work with other people. I don't have any experience or even know where to start. Can you tell me where is the best place to begin? Thanks for your time and help, D." Cool. Hey there, D. Thanks for reaching out. Yeah, as you know, I always say reaching out is a sign of strength, not weakness, like many of the people out in the world would have us believe. No way. It's a sign of strength, and you are strong. I like your question. Where do you begin? Well, I'm going to share with you where I began because there's an abundance of information out there. The key is going to be to get into action with the information, because knowledge by itself, it's interesting, but has no power. It is an access to potential power, but you've got to apply it. I invite you to consider someone who plays the piano. If all they ever did was to read about the piano and music theory, but never actually sat down and played, would they be able to play it? No. They first have to learn all the basics and put their hands on the piano. They need to learn how the keys feel, how the white keys feel versus the black keys, where they are in relationship to their fingers, and how they sound individually, and then how they begin to sound together. They need to learn about tempo and expression and improvisation. They have to explore the keyboard and be willing to make mistakes and practice. And with that all said, I'll give you a few places to begin so you can really dive into this. All right. So I'm a big fan of reading books on the topic of personal development. And I'm going to give you some of my favorite books right from my own library. And you can get these online or your local bookstore if you have one of those. And these are all like gems that I reference on a regular basis and have read parts of them many times. This first one is called The War of Art, not The Art of War. That's a different book. This is The War of Art. Break through the blocks and win your inner creative battles. It's by a gentleman named Steven Pressfield, who has an incredible story of just struggle and triumph and overcoming resistance. And resistance is a topic that you'll hear me talk a lot about too, because it is so prevalent in our lives. And this book just helps you really get present to the level of resistance, what resistance is, the different forms that it takes in your life. It's surprising because it disguises itself so well. But this is a great one. And when you can begin to take on the resistance in your life, things are going to open up for you that you didn't have access to before. So an easy, quick read, The War of Art. Here's a fantastic one. This is Brene Brown, who's gotten a lot of press in these past 5-10 years. She really focuses on emotional intelligence. She has focused a lot on shame and resilience. And I'm going to read something from this because I just think it's so cool. And you want to know where to start. So here's a great place to start. But she says, both joy and pain are vulnerable experiences to feel on our own and even more so with strangers. The foundation of courage is vulnerability, the ability to navigate uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And then she goes on to say, I believe joy is probably the most vulnerable emotion we experience because we're afraid that if we allow ourselves to feel, we'll get blindsided by disaster or disappointment. Then she goes on to talk about foreboding joy. There's so much good stuff in this book. Make sure you read her material. Super good. This one is one of my favorites. I have marked this thing up so much. It's got so many dog ears and notes in there, and it's called If You Think You Can, You Can. No, it's called If You Think You Can, and it's by T.J. Hoisington. If You Think You Can. And I love this one. It's full of anecdotes of people he has met or stories that he's heard over the years, people who have inspiring stories, who beat the odds, who were born into situations that by all rights they shouldn't have done what they did, but they beat the odds, and it's super inspiring. We need to have a high level of inspiration in our life, and this is a book full of it, and very motivational. The Four Agreements. You definitely want to read this one, Don Miguel Ruiz. And the one takeaway that I'll just share with you is he talks a lot about being your word, having your word be impeccable, and really doing what you say you're going to do. I love the expression, consider it done. You know, if someone says to you, consider it done, it's such a profound statement because they really are saying, hey, you just asked me to do this, and I want to make sure that you have the utmost confidence that I'm going to do it. In fact, just consider that it's already been done. That's how strong they are with their word, with keeping their word. So the Four Agreements, get that one too. The one I'm rereading right now is The Power of Now. This is actually called Practicing the Power of Now. It's a condensed version, and this is by Eckhart Tolle. And this one is such a powerful book. It's probably one of the books that has impacted me the most with its main concepts of realizing how disconnected we are from the now moment. Because we're frequently reliving the past, beating ourselves up about something, or reliving something that doesn't serve us, or worrying about the future. And neither of those places, the past or the future, exist. And so we spend a lot of time in realms of thinking that simply don't even exist, and we're missing out on the only thing that does exist is this moment right now. So I highly recommend this one. Really put that high on the list. And then we also got You Are a Badass Every Day. Somebody just recommended this one to me, and I really enjoyed it. It's by Jen Sincero. You Are a Badass. Easy reading. Something you can just read a few pages of during the day or in the morning and kind of get you that short burst of motivation. It's really good. Classic, Think and Grow Rich. You got to get this one. It's not just about making money. This is about expanding your mind. It also does address making money, but it's about expanding your mind in a way that allows you to really create abundance in your life, not just monetary budget abundance either. Abundance in all areas of your life, but Think and Grow Rich, and this, of course, is by Napoleon Hill. I got some others here, but we're out of time. We got to get, well, actually, I'm going to buzz through these super fast. Life's Golden Ticket by Brendan Bouchard. You can see him online. There's lots of videos on him. Of course, Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins, tons of videos online about him. I Can See Clearly Now by Dr. Wayne Dyer. Good stuff. And a classic also, Zig Ziglar. And I love the little section right here on the cover. It says, the how-to book that gives you a checkup from the neck up to eliminate stinking thinking and avoid hardening of the attitudes. Really quality stuff. So this is where you start, D. You start by getting into the books and the videos and going to the courses, and it's going to expand your life, and you're going to be able to take on your problems at a new level, and then you can help other people do the same. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Enjoy these commercials. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, welcome back to Live It Up. We are here with Amy. Hello, Amy.
Hello.
Hello. All right, hey, what are we talking about today?
I'm going to talk about a study that was just published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association.
Okay, what's it about?
So what they looked at was mortality, which means risk of death or rate of dying, in U.S. adults over age 50, and how their risk of dying was affected by a sense of life purpose. So I get the email of their, each edition that comes out, and I thought that sounded really cool.
Yeah, it does sound cool. So we're talking about purpose and how it affects your life expectancy.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about the study.
Yeah, so, there is a growing body of literature showing that a strong sense of purpose in life leads to improvements in both physical and mental well-being and health, and it enhances quality of life. And so, given that we know that a sense of purpose is able to be created, right? Because it's mindset. Mm-hmm. It's not doesn't fall out of the sky.
Right.
So there actually could be interventions. And so it's a good thing to study. So in health, and especially in public health or in healthcare, you want to look at if there's something that can be intervened in, or then you want to look at that. So if we could actually help people create a stronger sense of life purpose and that led to improvement in health, mm-hmm. well, let's study it.
Yeah.
So they did. So the study looked at, there is something called the HRS, which is a health and retirement study, and it's been around since 1992. And this was people, but they've kind of put new people in over the years. And so looking at adults over age 50. And so what they did was they had people fill out a questionnaire in 2006, and then the psychological questionnaire assessing their sense of life purpose. And so a higher score had a higher sense of purpose. And the group was about 7,000 people, and then they followed them to 2010, and they looked at how many months they lived between 2006 and 2010. And so the average age was in the late 60s at this point in the study. So they found that a stronger sense of purpose was associated with lower all-cause mortality.
And how were they able to assess this? Did it go into that? Yeah,
well, so you could kind of say, well, gosh, did they look at other things that might affect mortality? So they actually were able to control, meaning in studies you can actually take out people or hold the variables so they don't affect your data. Mm-hmm. And looking at age, marital status, race, education, even things like smoking and chronic disease, obesity, they took all those things out so they would not be part of the equation. And they actually studied questions like things that you have a strong sense of meaning in your life, you have goals, and all of these create healthy behaviors. So the people with the lowest life purpose scores were 2.5 to 3 times more likely to die.
Wow.
In those 4 years than people that had higher scores. So it's pretty interesting when you look at the graph. It's the rate of dying basically it's directly related to the score of life purpose, meaning each increment in life score, it went like this as far as the risk of dying if you had a lower score.
That made me just consider what happens at the clinic and stuff. There's all the sorts of these questionnaires,
Yeah.
I wonder if there's ever been a questionnaire do you feel like you have a purpose in this life,
No, I mean the questionnaire that we have to have everyone fill out right now is called a PHQ-9, which it's assessing for depression. Because there is data on that too. People that have depression will have a lower or a higher mortality as well.
We need to add another form in there.
No, let's not add another form.
Do you have purpose?
Patients will not like that, nor will the rest of us.
All right. Well, did researchers suggest why this is the case?
Yeah, so, and it's pretty interesting because you could also say, well, does it just mean that you lead, that like people who feel healthier or happier or more positive, that they have healthier life habits? But then again, we controlled for stuff like obesity, smoking, that kind of stuff. So what they actually have found is that this sense of strong, well, actually, they don't really know, but the idea is that this strong sense of purpose may lead to less inflammation and therefore less disease. There was another study in 2012 that showed that people that had a strong sense of well-being, which had clear life purpose, had a decreased expression of pro-inflammatory genes.
Really?
And so what that means, that's the topic of epigenetics, which you've been bringing up at our house lately because you heard that podcast about it, that the genes that control inflammation were turned down in people that had this psychological state of well-being.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk more about that after the commercial break, so stick around. And before we go to the break, what's your purpose? Have you got purpose?
Think about it. Yeah.
Think about it. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, welcome back to Live It Up. We are talking about purpose. And before we went to a commercial break, we left you with the question, do you feel like you have purpose in your life? And so I hope that began to turn the wheels in your head, because as she is indicating, it can allow you to live a longer life.
It's true.
So when we left off, we were talking about the concept of epigenetics.
Yes.
Yeah. And so my understanding of epigenetics is that it's our environment and even our thinking that can literally activate or turn on or turn off genes. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And the study of epigenetics, it gets really complicated, so we're not going to talk about it, but it's actually not only that, it's the turning on and off of genes, but it's actually that is somehow passed on to other generations. There's been some really interesting studies, if you were to Google epigenetics, looking at this in humans and in animals. And so it doesn't involve changing the actual DNA sequence, like the genome is not affected, but it's whether the gene is activated or not. And whether the gene is activated or not means whether your cells are going to read the gene or not, whether you're going to make a protein or not. And so it appears to be affected by so many things, by environment, diet, lifestyle, emotions, where you live. They did a study like during World War II about where people lived and whether they had famine, I think, in some families, and then just how the risk of diabetes and for future generations. So that's what you had heard about the other day about epigenetics. And the thing that's so interesting, so you and I talked about this, so they did the study with mice. So this will give you an example. So they exposed these mice to a certain smell that they normally don't smell, and then they gave the mice a small shock. And so I'm not an advocate for animal torture or lab experiments, but anyway, so warning. Anyway, they gave the mice a small shock, so then they became fearful to the smell, so they had a fearful reaction every time that they got this smell, were exposed to the smell. So that's normal, right? But so then the interesting thing is that the babies of these mice, even though they had never smelled this smell, they also showed increased sensitivity when introduced to the smell. They would shudder, like who knows if in fear, we don't really know, but they would have a shuddering response compared to mice that didn't have parents that had been part of this experiment. And then even a third generation of these mice, these are the grandchildren of the mice that were experimented upon, they also had increased reaction to that smell, like where they had this shuddering. And they actually took in vitro sperm from mice that had been exposed. They actually had it be where the mice were conceived naturally and then also in vitro, and the same thing. So basically what they showed was that there actually was a change in the protein signaling for that smell.
Wow. So
that's what it's crazy to think about, and it's almost overwhelming because they have studies with like what women do when they're pregnant and what's happening in their lives, what they're, anyway, that all of these things can be passed down to generations that you can't even really find in the genome.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to bring a quote in by Helen Keller because we're going to talk about finding purpose. But I love this quote. She says, true happiness is not attained through self-gratification, but through fidelity to a worthy purpose.
Yeah, she was very driven.
Yes. Oh my
Obviously,
gosh.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about how can people work on creating their purpose?
Yeah, and so like we talked about before, I think it's really important to use the word creating, because I think so many people, even like all, graduation is happening right now, and people are like, gosh, what am I going to do? What's my purpose? What is my mission? And I think some people feel scared and maybe even a little bit helpless, thinking that their mission and their purpose is supposed to fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
It is not something that just falls out of the sky. It's something that you create, you're intentional about. So you can ask yourself questions and try to figure out what it is that you want to pursue.
Right. Or some people kind of experience the need to go and find it, like they have to go externally and go to India and find my life's purpose or something.
Yeah, and you may need a change in scenery, but not necessarily.
Right.
Yeah. So some questions to pose. One is, am I doing something that I love? So do you love what you're doing? And also, I want to say, it may not be your primary job. There's a lot of people that have an okay job, but it provides a great living and a great abundance for their family, but they have other things in their life that they really love. So they have a full life. You need, at least have a lot of your day that you spend doing something that you love.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing would be, am I surrounded by people that I care about? And so that's about creating connection. So do you have a sense of connection in your life, whether it's with, with your coworkers, with your family, with your friends, with the people in your community? That can give people a huge sense of purpose. Like, I'm doing this for my community. And whether your community is where you live, or it could be, say you're someone who's an advocate for, breast cancer awareness, or, that can also be a community that you get behind, and it gives you a strong sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Another question would be, am I fulfilled with what I'm doing? And that's a question that I think a lot of people don't ask themselves. And maybe some people are afraid to ask themselves that because it may make them want to make a change, which is scary.
Right.
But are you fulfilled? Are you fulfilled personally, financially, intellectually? Do you have, enough variety? Do you have enough stability? Whatever you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then another last question would be, where can I have an impact? And I think there is something that we heard a while back where it's not just, if you look at what are the needs, what does the world right now need? And then look at what do I love to do and couple it with what does the world need? And that's another great way to find.
That's a powerful question to ask.
It is. What does the world need right now?
Yeah. What do I have? What does the world need? What do I have that could contribute to that need?
Yeah, and there may be different avenues. And then, like you talked about earlier, then the next step is to get into action. And again, that can be sometimes fear-provoking, but where you really need to, make some phone calls, make a CV or a resume, get out there with some job opportunities, be willing to travel or look at new things, talk to people, and try to figure out what it would be that would inspire you. Because you will be happier, and even this epigenetics, you will have different gene expression.
Yeah.
If you are feeling fulfilled. I mean, there's even people that like who is it, Warren Buffett, that eats McDonald's every day?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this the owner of Southwest Airlines that smoked and drank whiskey like his whole life, not his whole life, but most of his adult life. And you think, well, those people may not live for very long, but those men were in their 80s.
Yeah.
And so even though they had they didn't have some good habits, they had a really strong sense of purpose.
Huge purpose.
And they had a long life.
Yeah.
Or Warren Buffett's still living, yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about asking the critical questions. What am I passionate about? What do I love doing? What do I want to be remembered for? And what are the needs of this world? And then matching those things up.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So again, I invite you to consider, what is your purpose, and find that purpose, create that purpose in your life, and live a life fulfilled.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it. We got to go. It's time to get out there, be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You do have something that this world needs, and we believe in you.